I am very excited. I think you're the only one that has asked me to pray, and I'm very happy that you have done that. So if you want to, you go ahead and.
Lord, help us today to share your goodness and your grace for all of us. Help this to be God glorifying, and help this to fill our souls today. And I would like to pray for a friend of mine who's undergoing aggressive breast cancer surgery as we speak. Please keep her and her family safe and give her strength for whatever the road ahead may bring. In your name, amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Family or just a friend or?
Community member whose children were my age and whose grandchildren are exactly the same age as mine. So we're together all the time in the community. I just read it on Facebook this morning, and it's tough. You know,
You can relate.
I can, and although I don't know the journey that she has in front of her, I really am praying that everything can go well. When they put the word aggressive in front of cancer, it's tough.
I'm sorry. Because I think for you it probably brings back some.
It does, and I'm sorry for her family. They spend a lot of time together. They do a lot of things together. So
Close-knit family.
yes.
It's going to rock their world. Janey, I just want to thank you for joining me today on Real Feel, the podcast, Real Feel Insights. I appreciate it. I think the subject that I'd like to talk to you about is a tough subject for a family and a couple, but it's not only tough, it's life-changing, and you've weathered it. So it's cancer. Your husband passed away from that. But maybe perhaps first what we could do is just tell me a little bit about yourself, Janey, little background.
You know, as I thought about this, I thought about how God has prepared me for death my entire life. My parents were married right before World War II, and they had a girl and a boy, and things were wonderful. My sister drowned when she was 12. After that, my parents decided that they wanted more children. So I was born, and then my younger brother was born. So it was like they had two little families. And when I say God prepared me for death all along, my sister's monument and my parents' monument was in the cemetery where I went to church all the time. So we played around it. It was nothing that my parents thought was wrong or bad. I lived with the fact that she had passed before me and she was in heaven. And we had a small country church where my grandmother was the organist and then my aunt was the organist. And when I was 12, I started being the organist, and I played for my first funeral when I was 12 on a pump organ.
So when you say that you were around death and the cemetery, I suppose perhaps your mom maybe went out to go visit her daughter, your sister, often, and then you just came along. It was kind of part of just being in the cemetery.
I don't remember that. I just remember that it was part of the cemetery in my country church. Was right there. I mean, there's the church and there's the cemetery. My paternal grandparents were buried there. I had two little tombstones next to them of aunts that died when they were 4 and 6 maybe.
Sure.
Little lamb tombstones, you know. So we played there, and it was like
I understand.
death was
Sure.
part of life.
Sure.
It
Yeah.
was, my ancestors were there. And I don't say that anybody ever said that to me or anything, but looking back now, when you asked me to do this podcast, I thought, why have I reacted to death the way that I have?
Which is?
It's the bridge to life eternal with God and heaven. It's not something to be afraid of. It's not something that isn't welcomed by a Christian, because it is our pathway to heaven
Okay.
and life
I understand.
eternal. So
Nice view. Very nice way, yeah, to explain it.
and it's interesting, my church, which is no longer because it burnt in the 80s, so now it's just the cemetery up there. But it's set on top of a hill, and you can see all the way around. And
The cemetery is.
correct,
Okay.
and that's what's up there
Okay.
now, in a monument where the church was. And this, I don't know how this will sound, but Jim and I had our monument set there before he had cancer or died.
Your husband, Jim?
My husband,
Okay.
yes. And so, and he said, yep, this is where we were married, and this is where I'll be buried.
Sure.
And that was so fortunate for one of our grandchildren, because at the funeral we have our military picture set in the tombstone. And he, in his little 5-year-old way, said, oh, this is where Grandpa's supposed to be, because his picture is here.
Oh my gosh. Be-
And we
He
did
can-
we did not know
Sure.
that. I mean, we didn't foresee that my husband would die young or anything. We just wanted to take care of something for our
Wow.
children, so that they wouldn't have to do it.
Right, the decision was made. So I absolutely understand what you're talking about. I mean, to pre-plan that, a lot of people steer away from that. They are scared. It's scary for them. You just kind of, even before you even knew that Jim had cancer, you were already jumping into
Well,
where your
and-
final resting place was.
We
gonna
were on the way to where one of our children lived. There was this stone place with monuments, and one day we were driving home from our daughter's house, and we're like, let's stop in, and then we just did
be.
it.
Sure, yeah, so a lot of that stuff was all done before Jim even had.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so it's a God thing. And I think when you are a Christian, you can look at everything that happens, no matter how inconsequential it is, as a God thing. And my being here today, our relationship is definitely God orchestrated and planned for me to be right here with you today, Sarah.
Pretty cool. A lot of times, people and I have found myself, at sometimes some darker moments in my life. You can say that, and you want to believe that as a Christian, but sometimes those darker times you kind of question the man upstairs.
That would be correct.
So it's difficult in those darker moments for me at least, to say it's a God thing. I think what I have found over the years is there's little things through those dark times that I say, that was a God thing. And then that helps me, identify it. And I try, when things are going well, everything's going well. You're not looking for, pieces that will, help you or motivate you or strengthen you. But when you're at your lowest and breaking point, sometimes it's difficult to find those God things. And they're there. And sometimes we have to kind of turn around and say, oh, that's why. That's what I find too.
That is exactly correct. When we look in the rearview mirror, it is much easier to see God's hand in what has happened, looking forward is not quite as easy.
Yeah, a little difficult. I know sometimes I can even look back on when my husband Brad passed away, there was a lot of things in place in that last year, and we had no idea, that, that because I brought Brad in, he had COVID. I brought Brad into the hospital, and 3 weeks later, he was gone. And so we didn't have, like any duration there of, he was healthy right up until, he had gotten sick. But I can honestly look back on some of the things, like with our business, with our children, some conversations we had. I didn't know it prior, but afterwards it made some decision making, and doors had kind of started to open up already. And I know that was a God thing. Those were God things, but I didn't know it at the time. But I was able, and thank goodness I was able to see some of that stuff, that he had it all planned, but not at the time, but it was shortly afterwards. And those little, I think I call them nuggets, little gold nuggets that God allows us to see, and he had it there for us. But sometimes we don't always see it, but eventually sometimes we do. So can you tell me a little bit about, so how old were you when you found out that Jim had cancer? How old was Jim? Just give me a little bit of a glimpse into what that was like right kind of around that time when you found out.
I was almost 63, and he was almost 65.
Okay.
And Jim and I were high school sweethearts. We married right after I graduated from high school. We went on an adventure. We volunteered in the military, and we were Army air traffic controllers in Germany for 3 years.
Together.
And then we came home and came back to northern Minnesota, to where we grew up and raised our children and lived in close proximity to each of our parents.
So grandmas and grandpas on both sides were a big part of your life.
And then I became a teacher. I used the GI Bill to do that. And then Jim became a rural carrier, so he carried mail. And he retired 5 years before his diagnosis. And when he retired, he said, I want you to be done as well. I didn't have full retirement at that time, but I said, okay, if you want me to be done. We had just had a very close friend of ours that had just died from cancer after a maybe 5-month battle.
Ooh.
And he said, I want you to be done as well. And so we had a year where I had no income, no retirement. I paid in retirement, and we just used our savings in that. So we were retired for about 5 years before his diagnosis, and we had just had a weekend at the water park with all 6 of the grandkids and stuff like that. And we got home. It was right after President's Day weekend. We got home, and he said, I didn't want to tell you before because I didn't want to spoil the weekend, but he said, I haven't been feeling well, and I think I have an ulcer. And so he went to the doctor.
Were you concerned?
No,
ulcer.
He had an ulcer probably about when he was in his 40s.
Okay.
And he had some, and he was always like, he'd take a Tums or whatever.
Sure,
If things weren't
So
going well.
you weren't alarmed?
No. And so he went into the doctor, and because he said he thought it was an ulcer, they're like, yep, okay, they put him on whatever they put him on, Prilosec or something like that. But he was healthy. Like his normal routine in the summer was to golf 18 holes in the morning, come home, do some gardening, ride his motorcycle, whatever. In the winter, he would go ice fishing. He was in good shape. He was
really enjoying life.
Yes,
enjoying
and
retirement.
he had he wore the same size pants like his whole life.
Oh, sure,
He,
sure. Yep.
he took care of himself. Anyway, so he didn't go to the doctor routinely, and so he just went in to whoever they could. Well, in a week later, she called and asked how he was doing, and he goes, well, I'm not really feeling a lot better, but it'll get better. And she said, I would really like you to have a CT scan. And he's like, I don't think that's necessary. And she said, I really think you should. She said, I'll make an appointment for tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So he said, I'll go in for a CT scan. And so he did. And when he got home, I said, so how'd it go? Because in a small town, you know who the technicians are.
Sure.
And the technician was a friend of ours who had played broom ball way back in the day with Jim. When you go out on the ice and you take your broom.
Had some good memories.
Hockey, yes. And he knew him, and he said, oh, I made a joke, and he said he wouldn't look at me. And I filed that away, and I thought that's very interesting. And the phone rang at 4 o'clock that afternoon, so about 6 hours afterwards. And I answered it, and it was the doctor. And
The one that had ordered the CT scan.
and so I put it on speakerphone.
What day was this? Do you remember?
Was on a Tuesday. And she said, there's a mass on your pancreas. And so I believe that you should have a biopsy, and I've already scheduled one in Fargo for you.
Okay.
And she told us the size, I think it was 5 centimeters. And so we hung up, and we hugged each other. And immediately I went into research mode because I'm an educator, and that's what I do. And
So a mass on the pancreas, that's 5 centimeters. That's the information you got. And then you took it from there and started just.
and our good friend had just, in the previous 15 months, gone through a pancreatic cancer journey. He had had pancreatic cancer on the head of his pancreas. He had taken treatment for a year, gotten to his Whipple surgery, and he was in remission.
Okay.
His wife was so diligent about posting every day on Caring Bridge his whole journey. I knew what he had gone through. I knew the medical terms of things. I knew that he'd been on full Furanox treatment. I knew that he'd been on gemcitabine. I knew all of the treatment regimen. I knew all of the times when he had almost died in that 1 year. We had been at his celebration party before his surgery, after he had been through all of this treatment for a year. We went to the party. He said, I'm having a party before surgery.
Yeah, positive.
We were there, and that was less than 6 months before Jim's diagnosis. And long story short,
Can I ask you real quick before
Yes.
you finish? I just want to, so did that doctor, did she use the cancer word or just?
nope,
there
she
was a
said you have a mass
mass.
on your pancreas.
Okay. So when you got that,
I knew it was pancreatic cancer. I knew in
Okay.
my heart. I knew Jim's journey. I didn't know that his cancer was on the tail of the pancreas, which is entirely different than on
okay.
the head of the pancreas.
okay,
I knew what he was going to be going through. You know, as our friend went through all of this every day, I would read the Caring Bridge site to Jim, and we would talk about it, and we would go, oh my goodness, and everything that was happening to him, all his trips to the ER, all of the things that had to happen for him to get to his surgery.
so you had this knowledge.
Oh my goodness, I had more knowledge, yes.
Did that benefit you, do you think, or did that hinder you? Having a close friend going through this in remission, did you have a false hope? Or what, can you tell me a little bit?
I felt that it gave me exactly what I needed to help Jim fight.
Okay.
Because I felt like I had been given an extra sword, an extra shield.
Wow.
I felt like God had gifted me this knowledge so that I could help him in this medical journey.
Okay. 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 Interesting. I just think of like when you get that call, how and what does that do? You know, how does that, like a gut punch type of feeling? Were you feeling that at that point?
I really feel like because I had walked through this with our friend, because I truly internalized everything that was going on, and every day I looked forward to that Caring Bridge post and what was his day going to be like? What would they find out? I knew where he was taking treatment, and his wife was a nurse, and she
She could
we were
articulate.
good friends, so yes.
She could
So
articulate
it was
them.
all the medical stuff. So I really felt, and there were no tears that day because Jim said right away, well, she didn't say it's cancer. And I did not say to him, I know it's cancer. I said, no, she did not say it was cancer.
But you knew.
I knew.
You knew, but you didn't say it. Okay.
I knew.
Okay.
In my heart.
Okay.
As, Jim was like, yep, we'll do the biopsy in Fargo. We're not going to tell my mother. We're not going to tell anybody until we... And then he finally gave me the thumbs up a couple days later to call Mayo, and they took us right away. And so that's where our journey began, was at Mayo in Rochester.
Okay.
And another blessing that we have, other than being in Minnesota and living in absolutely God's best place that he created, because it's beautiful, we're 5 hours from Rochester.
From
and
the
they
Mayo
are
Clinic.
absolutely the best people that you could ever. I cannot say enough good things about
Wow.
everything that happened to us there, and the professionalism and everything that we dealt with. And that's where we heard the cancer word.
Okay.
And Jim's numbers were huge.
Okay.
Like they have all these blood tests for different kinds of cancers, and his numbers were like out of the roof.
Early on, very quickly.
Yes.
How long do you think that he had that mass? Do you project from the knowledge now that you have?
Let me think. 8 years prior to that, he had had a herniated disc in his back. And we had doctored with that down at the spine center. They didn't do surgery or anything. But after that, he could never run again. He was a runner. He ran 4 miles a day. And after that, he could never run again. And I almost wonder if that episode didn't trigger something. They really can't tell
Right.
you how long you've had cancer, how long it's
Okay.
grown. But in my mind, he could never run again after that. And they didn't see anything on the scans at that time that would indicate anything. So yeah, and pancreatic cancer, when it's on the tail of the pancreas, it grows toward your spinal column. So he had intense pain. By the time we got to Mayo Clinic, he was already on Oxy, and it was exponentially increasing. The pain was every day, so that he was a strong man, and he had always dealt with pain well, but he was in a lot of
So
pain.
it went rapidly from you having that, what is it, President's Day weekend with your
with
children
everybody.
and grandchildren.
And he was on ibuprofen then.
Okay. So a couple weeks by the time you were down in Mayo? That you were now on
It
Oxy?
happened really fast. Yep. His CT scan was February 26th, and then we had 2 trips to Mayo, and then we had our treatment locally, 30 miles away, and he had his first round of FOLFIRINOX March 26th, exactly 1 month later. And the oncologist said, this is unreal. And it's because I pushed. Like when we went to the oncologist at our local, and I said, okay, so when can we schedule this? And he's like, well, he has to have education, we have to have a port put in, all this. And I said, can we have the port put in tomorrow? And he goes, well, I suppose, but I was thinking next week. And I said, no, I want it tomorrow. Because Jim's pain was
Increasing
worse every
significantly.
day, significantly increasing. And Fulfurinox, if you're not familiar with it, it's multiple drugs that they put in your system, and you have a cassette that you carry with you for 48 hours afterwards. He had a port put
Okay.
up here near his heart, and then the chemo goes into that. And anyway, and then we would go back 48 hours later, and they'd take the cassette off and do whatever. And then this was let me think, must have been every 2 weeks, every 14 days we
Wow.
did this. And he was supposed to have 6 treatments before we went back
Back to Mayo.
Back to Mayo, yep.
Okay.
So 6 times 2 is 12, so that's 3 months. Yep, because we were back there in June.
Okay.
So we went back the end of June.
How was he feeling? The pain? Was that kind of under control?
Okay, well,
Somewhat?
this is another, when we met for the first round of chemo, I said, I want a no. When he had his port put in, he came out of the surgery, he said, this is the best I've felt. I don't have any pain. So I said to the nurse, what did you give him? And she said fentanyl, just a little dose of fentanyl. And I went, oh. And so then when we went for his first round of chemo, and the oncologist was just this little old man that flew in from some other state, to do this.
Wow.
And he had all this experience, and I said, I want him on a fentanyl patch. And he looked at me and I said, we're increasing the medicine every day. I don't want to do that. I want him on a fentanyl patch. This is the only thing that has helped him. And he told me, he made me promise when we started this journey that I would help with the pain. And when we were down at Mayo, the only reason that my husband ever decided to do the treatment, when we went down there, he said, if they can't do surgery and cut it out like our friend, I will not do the treatment. I will just go home.
Okay.
And I said, I understand that. And they looked at him and they said, well, the mass is significant, your numbers are huge, but you're really healthy and you're young. You're 64. And they said, if the cancer responds to the treatment, you can get to surgery and we'll be good. So
you went with that.
So
but
he decided.
The
But
fentanyl eased that pain for him during that
so
time.
we patched him with fentanyl, and we actually got up to 100 patch before it started decreasing.
Okay.
Before his pain started,
Okay.
we patched him up. We started at 25, then we went to 50. Then
Because
we
the
went
pain
to-
was
because the
increasing.
pain was increasing,
Okay.
and the treatment was real. It's hard. It is really hard. We were in the emergency room the first night after he had chemo, and we ended up in the ER at midnight because he started throwing up, and he wasn't supposed to do that because it could dislodge the port and everything. So we went into the ER, and I said, he can't throw up. You have to give him something. And I explained the situation, and that was one of a number of trips to the ER. But I remember, I had to run home. I had to leave him in the ER, and they needed something that I didn't have, and we lived like 2 miles from the ER, and I was on my way home, and I had the Christian radio station on, and they were playing Well Done by the Afters. If you haven't listened to it, it's a very comforting song to me about our journey here on earth. and then God welcoming us with open arms and saying, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Welcome to the place where you belong.
Well done.
Well done, thou good and faithful servant." And so it was just like, that was like, yes, this is his journey.
So
You
that
know,
was a pivotal moment right there.
for me,
For
it was
you?
like, yes, this is my job, is to try and keep it together for him. Anyway, that was that first long day, because the FOLFIRINOX treatment is like, it's an all-day affair. And because
Very
they
hard.
switch, and very hard. But then the chemo is so, even though they give you medicine so that you don't get sick, that's, yeah. So anyway, the ER, Jim was always like, the doctors know best, and the medical profession knows best. And I am like, no, I can ask questions and I can push. And that's why he didn't want to go to the ER. He said, it'll be fine. And I said, no, you cannot throw up. We cannot dislodge this. This is your first treatment. We have to, you know.
You're a real advocate. You are that's, the word advocate comes to my mind, that you fought and you were relentless, to know options.
I kept a diary. I still have it.
Wow.
And it talked about the medicine that he was on, how the day went. I pulled up my FitnessPal on my iPad. I tracked his calories every day so that he could maintain weight. The oncologist looked at me after a couple of rounds of chemo and said, "Can I clone you? Because there are people that need you on this journey." And I'm like, nope.
No, I'm here
I'm
for
only
Jim.
one. I'm only one, and this is the way God made me, and so it must be for this journey.
So when you talk about like the doctors and the nurses, I mean, they really appreciated your advocacy, your questions. Not that you were questioning them. You made this your world, which is, cancer doctors and nurses, that's their world, and they enjoy
Correct.
sharing that information. And they were excited to have a patient or a patient's spouse or, a family member wanting to learn different options.
Well, and like when I asked for the fentanyl patch, he looked at Jim, and Jim said, she's kind of driving this journey, because he said, I'm on so many pain meds, I don't think very well. And he admitted that many times. He's like, I'm really foggy today, don't let me make any decisions.
Sure. So he was identifying that. And
Yes. And so the doctor said, well, I'm not concerned about him being addicted to it, because when you have pain,
right.
and he said, this is a painful cancer. And so he did that. Well, then, so his first round of FOLFIRINOX was March 26th. By the beginning of May, his pain was lessening. So he wasn't taking the oral oxy with the fentanyl or any of that. And then we started to titrate down the fentanyl patches. So we went down to 50. And then finally he went off all pain meds by the middle of May or toward the end of May. And he had a couple of really dicey nights where he had night sweats, and he just kind of slept out on the couch. And
Was it because of the pain, or was it because of just
I think it was
backing
some withdrawals.
withdrawal symptoms? Okay.
Yep. And so then he was drug-free by the time we went back to Mayo in June. He had no pain meds, and his numbers came down by the thousands. They were almost in the acceptable range.
Okay. So this was good news.
So this was good news, and we went back down there, and the specialists at Mayo were like, this is unbelievable.
Wow.
But the tumor had not It was still wrapped around his vascular system,
Okay.
so they were not able to. They said, you're not at surgery yet, so we want you to go back and do 4 more rounds of FOLFIRINOX.
So double what he had just gone through.
He had already done 6. They wanted him to do 4
4 more.
more and
Okay.
come back in August.
Okay.
When we got home, it was all kinds of crazy celebrations when we were down there because it was like, yay. And locally, they wouldn't schedule us. You know, I said, well, we're going down to Mayo, so let's schedule our next treatment. And if you haven't been on the cancer journey, you don't understand that they have all these people that come every week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. It's all this scheduling that has to be done. So when we first started with FOLFIRINOX, we were on the 2-week schedule for the 6 times. Well, after the 6th time and we were going down to Mayo, I said, okay, we'll schedule for 2 weeks out. And they said, no, we can't do that because we don't know what's going to be going on. And in my mind, I didn't like that
Okay.
because that meant that whenever we found out what was going on, we wouldn't have a spot.
Right. You were back. You were going to be pushed back
We
for
were
a week
gonna
or
be
two.
pushed back. And that's exactly what happened when we came back from Mayo. We were not able to do that next round at 2 weeks. We had to do it at 3. And thinking back on that, I don't know if that would have made a difference or not, but I know it was God's plan. So, and then when we got home, we did do some crying because Jim held me and he said, what are we going to do when it comes back? So in his mind, he knew with his friend, because our friend already had had a relapse, the other person
Yes,
that
yeah.
had had the pancreatic cancer. He had already had to go back in for surgery and was now looking at more chemo. So after his successful surgery where they said, you're home free,
Right.
he wasn't.
Okay.
So then that was in June. So he went back to do 4 more rounds of FOLFIRINOX. And his body wouldn't take the 4th round. And the pain started returning.
His body wouldn't take it. What do you mean?
Your white blood cell count has to be at a certain level before they'll let you have the chemo. If it's too low, it won't. And they put this little bug on your arm. It's called a Neulasta patch.
Okay.
I hope I'm getting all these words right because it's been 5 years since his death. But anyway, they put that bug on, and what it does is it bumps up your white blood cell count so that you're healthy enough for the next one. But most people never take more than 6 rounds of FOLFIRINOX because your body can't take it. So they were asking him actually to do something that they don't ask other people to do. So he got 3 rounds, but when he went for his 4th round, then his body wasn't able to take it.
Okay.
And then the pain started coming back. And I would call Mayo and I'm like, can we come back before our appointment because he wasn't able to take that? And they said, nope, just keep your appointment. Well, the pain was getting so bad that I was taking all of the meds that I kept all the pain meds from when he had been titrating up. So now I started giving them to him again.
Like the oxy and the fentanyl and the patches and stuff. Were we back up to?
I don't think I was patching him by then. But it was the oxy and anything else that they had given him.
So it came
during
back
that time.
really fast.
Yep. And by the time we had our appointment in August. Which was just 8 weeks after we had been there with the good news, then his counts were higher than they were to begin with. So the FOLFIRINOX, the cancer had figured out how to
Wow.
outbeat
So
the
when you
chemo.
went back down there and got all that information, that
In
was
August.
In August. What day was that?
Oh, it was toward the end of August, and Jim actually had to be hospitalized for a week because of pain. We could not
get on top of that?
No, we were going to do some kind of, I can't even remember who we were seeing. We were sent to see somebody about some kind of a procedure. And Jim just hung his head in pain. He was in so much pain. And the doctor looked at me as I held him over his head and said, if you have to take him to the emergency room, you have to go to St. Mary's. You can't bring him to the Mayo emergency room. You have to take him to St. Mary's.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like he knew what our journey was going to be like that night. And by 8 o'clock that night, I was driving across Rochester in the
St.
dark
Mary's.
to St. Mary's, to the ER, to have him admitted. Because the pain was not. All I had was Oxy, and it would not take care of the pain. So he was hospitalized there.
How are you doing at this time, like emotionally and mentally? How are you holding up? Because are you
God
still
was-
fighting it, or are you still
No,
are you
God was.
accepting?
I knew when the pain came back. I knew that wasn't good.
Okay.
And then they had told us. They said, well, at that appointment, they said, well, you've also got, it's bigger, and they were going to do some kind of something. They went down to do an endoscopy, and they couldn't because the tumor had grown into his stomach and into his spine.
Wow.
And so he was hospitalized there to get the pain under control. And then the doctors said, and that was the last time we were at Mayo again in November. Why don't you try this other more conventional treatment? It's not as hard on your body, and maybe the cancer will respond to that. And so Jim did acquiesce to that. And so we did.
Because he had originally said, if it's growing, he's fine. He's just, he doesn't want to.
If he could get to surgery, it would be okay. And they're like, well, I think it's gemcitabine. It's something that starts with a GEM. Anyway, that had been the frontline treatment before they discovered FOLFIRINOX. And so they said it could respond to that. And so we'll do that. And then, so we went home, and he lost his hair this time. And so in September and October, we did the gemcitabine, and that was like every 3 weeks, and it wasn't as hard on his body, but his pain didn't lessen, and so we knew it wasn't really working.
Responding.
So when we went back in November, they said, well, you're kind of holding your own, your numbers are a little higher and stuff like that. And Jim just said, what would be the reason for me to continue taking treatment? And the doctor said, well, most people just want to take treatment and just see what happens. And Jim said, well, it's not working. It's not lessening. The numbers aren't going down. My tumor's not getting smaller. I'm not going to be able to get to surgery. And so Jim said, what happens if I stop? And he said, well, you'll live like 3 to 6 more months. He said, after a few months, it'll get dicey. And Jim said, I'm not going to take any more treatment. He said, I'm just going to let God finish the journey. And the doctor said, you are one of very few people that can come to that realization.
And be okay with that.
And be okay with that. And he was. We went out that night, and he had a big steak at Outback Steakhouse, and he said, I'm not going to be sick. I will not be sick from chemo anymore. I will not feel nauseous. And that was like November 6th or 7th, and I remember we went to the local Legion Club, which is where we had gone Friday nights for supper, like routinely before all this started. And we were there, and somebody came up to me and said, he looks so good. And I said, he's doing very well. And then we went to the Veterans Day supper
In
And-
November.
in November 11th, and people came up and talked to them, and they would say, "How are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm really good. How are you?" And he turned it around, and the friends we were with marveled at his ability to make it about the other people and not about him. But he died January 9th. So he didn't even live 2 months after that. And the pain was excruciating. He was hospitalized again mid-December locally to have a subcutaneous pain pump put in. And then eventually it went right into his port. And
I want to ask you here, and I know this is very, very painful, but it's a spot where so many people, I mean, this is a turning point. This is a very critical spot. So Jim said, ask the questions, but how, from your perspective as a caregiver, because as caregivers, if you could take half of the pain away, half of the struggle, the mental struggle, half of it away as a caregiver, that we wish we could do. We wish you could do that. And that was the spot where there was nobody that could tell Jim what to do. It was him and solely him that had to make that decision.
correct.
So you as a caregiver, when he got to that spot and he made that decision to go ahead with it, can you tell me, and I know this is a very hard question to ask, but this is where so many people, find themselves when they're in your position as a caregiver. How did you feel? What did you, I'm thinking like, if I were in that position, I'd be like, can't we try one more thing? Or were you like, Jim, I'll match you wherever you're at. If that's where you're at, I'm going to match you there. I mean, I can't even imagine what that must be like at that moment when you're making that decision. Can you just, if you can articulate it, what was going through?
I knew that he was making the best decision because every time we went to oncology and he was being pumped full of poison, it was so hard on him. And he would have never done any of it if he didn't think he would have been able to get to surgery.
Okay.
He really felt like God had given him time then. If he made that decision, I remember it was just a couple days after we got home and I came, he was very jealous of my health. He wanted me, he kept saying, I want you to be healthy so that you can take care of me because I can't take care of myself.
Okay.
And so I walked every morning with friends. I did things, and God granted me the most restful sleep during that whole journey. I can't explain it. But I woke up every day refreshed, and I slept well. So I knew that the decision that he made was the best for him because he did not like doctors. He did not like the medical treatment. He didn't like it. And he knew that, he said to me, I'm glad that I'm dying first because you know all the computer stuff. You can get into all the retirement accounts.
Sure.
You will be fine. He said, I would have struggled so much if
Do you
it
believe
was
that?
you.
Do you believe that he was accurate with that? That you were more capable? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
It just hadn't been his thing. He got around a computer and it blew up. It just
Okay.
was, he was one of those people.
Yeah, but
So-
that doesn't mean just because you are capable and just because you are strong, and
He didn't want to leave me, and one of the things that I want to share is that then in that last 2 months, we continued to, he taught me everything about the house and all of this kind of stuff he was so happy the one day he said, guess who came over today? And it was our neighbor who was a good friend. And he said, I was just going to go talk to him about mowing the lawn and plowing for you. And he came over and he said he would do that. And so it was just like everything was falling into place. But we worked together. He wanted to plan his funeral. I sat at the piano. I'm a musician. And I sat and I played songs. And I cried and he cried. And he chose the songs and the scripture for his funeral. And the Holy Spirit moved him to write a letter. And my husband was not an author or a writer. But he wrote this beautiful letter about how God had worked in his life and that he had always wanted to die quickly, like he'd be out in the woods chopping wood and a tree would fall on him or something, he said. But God chose to give me this time to get things ready for my wife and to get everything in order. And he said, not everybody gets that time. And he wrote this. I couldn't figure out what he was doing. It was after it decided there was no more chemo. And so then he had this notebook, and he would sit at the table and he would write. And then after a couple weeks, he brought it to me and he said, here, I want you to read this and I want you to edit it. And I read it, and I'm like, this is, I don't know who wrote this, but it wasn't my husband. And so I edited it, and he said, I want that read at my visitation at the memorial service. And so my brother read it at the memorial service. And it was like God was talking through him and telling people how it is, how you can be at peace.
Sharing a peaceful message.
Correct. And then I do want to share with you, probably it's hard to imagine, and I'm not a nurse, I'm not medical, so every day I just tried to keep him in as little pain as I could. And so in my mind, it would have been better to increase the pain meds more than what was needed so that you wouldn't have to, so that he wouldn't be in pain, because with the pain pump, he had a continuous flow of pain meds as well as a morphine bump.
Yeah.
And every day he had used up all he could bump the morphine every 10 minutes. And by the end of the day, then that's what was happening. So then we would have to increase it. But the doctors are limited by the amount of pain meds that they can do and what they can do. So the one night, I remember specifically, the pain was always worse.
In the evening.
Between 2 or 3 in the morning and between 5 or 6 o'clock. So he needed his rest, and if he would push the bolus, the pain bolus, for the extra pump of morphine, then he would go to sleep, and then by the time he would wake up, the pain would be
out of
over
hand.
the top. So I specifically remember the one night I had the pain pump bolus in this hand, and I had my phone in the other hand set on silent at 10 minutes. So I would drift off to sleep for 10 minutes. This would buzz in my hand, and I would hit that so that he could sleep. And explaining that to the nurse and stuff, they still were only able to, and, finally, his pain was out of control, and he ended up, although he wanted to die at home, he spent the last 9 days of his life in the hospital. and Medicare didn't want to pay for any more days. So 2 days before he died, he was supposed to come home. And I was going to take care of him at home because there were no nursing homes that would take him because of the amount of pain meds he was on. They did not have the staff to do that. But God intervened, and Jim bled out and went unconscious 2 days before he died.
So he stayed in the hospital, and that was locally.
Correct.
Wow.
Yep. Our last visit at Mayo was in November.
Okay.
And then he died January 9th.
Wow.
So 2 months later. So I would say he had maybe 2 weeks where he felt pretty good, but then the pain started going.
Coming back.
And all of the things that go with end of life and the not eating and all of that kind of thing. He never complained, and he never, ever said, why me?
Never said, why me?
Never did.
Why me? And that's what we always seem to be when we're in a dark spot. We say, why me?
But he did not. And because he was so courageous in this battle, it allowed me to be his advocate and work as hard as I could to keep him as pain-free as I could.
Did you learn a lot of stuff about yourself through that duration? How much you were really capable of?
Like I said, I believe that God prepared me in everything and in every way for what he knew I was going to have to do. And so, like I said, he granted me peaceful sleep every night, and I was able to fight the battles during the day that needed to be fought. And just accepting that, I know that someone said to me, you can't take him home. He's hooked up to all these. And I said, I will, and I had hired some people that were going to come, and my brother and sister-in-law were coming to stay at the house, and we were going to do it. I didn't know how, and I couldn't envision it, but I knew that if he was coming home, I would be okay. I would be able to do it.
You could do it. You're an extremely strong person. You really are.
No, God gives us all strength for the journey, and when we look to him for guidance, it is exactly what we need to do.
Wow, that is so beautiful. Yeah. But you are a very, very strong person. You have a tough time taking a compliment, but you are. Yes, it is given to you by the man upstairs, but also at the same time, I mean, you really are. So you found out end of February.
February 26th. Started chemo March 26th, and Jim died January 9th.
January 9th.
Before COVID.
Okay.
And I was so thankful for that because we were able to have this wonderful service with a couple hundred people there. We had this nice lunch. We had military honors up at the cemetery. I know that you didn't get that same thing with your husband because of COVID, and I was thankful. The 9 days in the hospital I really look at as being very beneficial to me. God gave those to me because as I said, Jim was very jealous for my health. He's like, don't stay here. You go home and sleep in your own bed. So I drove home in the dark to an empty house for 9 days, got up in the dark, went to the hospital. So I was there around 6 and left around 9 at night. And although I was alone, Jim was still alive. And so that God helped me get through that transition.
The way that you can articulate your Christian faith is amazing. And I don't think that you are coming across as like, it's all perfect. I mean, clearly what we just walked through was some of your darkest moments of your entire life on this earth. But you always give him your Lord that credit, that he gave you that faith, that he gave you that mindset. He always had things ready for you. And it's really, a lot of times some people, they can become bitter during those moments. They can become angry during those moments. And I'm sure that you fluttered from time to time with some of those things. I'm sure of it, because it's not just, always perfect. But you always go back to that faith, no matter what you've been through. And the way you have articulated it through this journey has been a really a nugget, a gold nugget and a gem for me personally, just to, when you have that faith, just sometimes you waver from that, but to come back to that during those tough times. Thank you. This was a very, very tough subject. Sadly, a lot of people go through this, not particularly maybe pancreatic cancer, and it wasn't exactly the way your journey was. I'm sure that there's some people that were very close to this, the duration of it. But these are all these cancer sucks. That's, you see bumper stickers and people say that. And you can say that cancer sucks in a matter of, just 2 seconds. But to live it and to share it the way you did with me and with our viewers you're a strong person. And I thank you for doing that today, because this journey, you walked us through this, that 11 months, 10 and a half months, frankly, from being healthy to now being a widow. I thank you for that. I thank you for sharing these intimate feelings. And it has been now how long? Since January 9th of 19, correct?
Of 2020.
Of 2020.
So it's been 5.5 years.
5.5
Almost
years.
5.5 years.
How are you doing today, 5.5 years later?
My life is not what I had envisioned. But God is so good in so many ways. And I know that whatever my journey is, God has walked it before me. And so he gives me the strength to do what I need to do.
And he's walking with you.
Absolutely, every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't question what he gives me to do during the day. Like, I don't question what this is. I know that it's not all about me. I know that God's plan of salvation for the entire world is what's at stake. And I'm just a tiny thread in the tapestry of his masterpiece.
Oof, that's beautiful. I like that. Yeah.
So I don't know how this will affect somebody. I don't know who I affect every day. But I pray that I can be an instrument of God's peace.
Beautiful.
Each and every day.
You are. I can guarantee it. You are. It's been a real pleasure. And I know this was a hard subject. It was a hard topic for you. And I can't say it enough. Thank you from the bottom of my heart that you were able to share this and articulate this so well. And I wish you only the best. And I love you very much.
I love you too, Sarah.
Thank you.
It's been a great day.
It has.